Hey there, welcome on Travels and Code channel. Today we will compare two methods how can you make a request to your backend. It's two popular methods, it's a fetch function, it's built-in function, and Axios.js, it's separate library. So in this video we will cover the next topics. It's installation and using, GET request, data transformation, POST request, error handling, response timeout, HTTP interceptors, and simultaneous requests. So for demo purpose we will use StarWar API with this URL. So let's start. And the first one is installation and using. So fetch function is a built-in function already provided with JavaScript, so you can use it. It's already available, native code. And Axios is a library, you need to install it. So to install Axios library you can go to GitHub and clone it, or using npm install this library as your dependency. So you can use npm, bower, yarn, or just cdn, and then use it. Axios library is built using XML HTTP request from the browser, so it's available in all browsers, even in Internet Explorer, which is strange, but anyway it works here, so you can use it everywhere. Fetch function from the other side. It's a built-in function, but it's not available everywhere right now. For example, Internet Explorer not support in 11 version, but in all other versions it works more or less fine. So global usage is 95%. It's a very high number. The next one it's so installation. Fetch function we can use for using Axios. We need to install it in CodePen. We can use search Axios, and that's it. Right now it will be added to our project. So how can we make first GET request? So let's use it for fetch. We need to pass URL as parameter, and it returns promise, then data, let's try. As a result we have response object. So fetch URL, fetch function returns built-in object response with the next data. It's headers, for example, we have JSON, we have redirected. What's important, we have status is 200, everything was okay, status text empty, text type, course, and the URL. So we have some different data. So but what's important here, we didn't get the data itself, because here we have body is readable stream. To get data we need to do additional middle step. It's transforming your data. It's data transformation. So we need to return data JSON. We will call JSON function, and this function will transform your data to JSON and return promise. So again, then we will get data here. And so what do we have? We have data, it's object, and in this object we already have data. What we need is birth year created, and what's the most important name? It's Luke Skywalker. So we got the name of this people one from StarWar API. So we need to implement two steps. It's the first one, it's parse data to needed format. It might be JSON, might be string, blob, or some other format, and then we can get data. So for Axios, call method get URL as parameter, and it returns promise, then data, console log data. Let's take a look. Okay, this log was too big. Here we have this data. So data name, what Axios returns, it's status 200, it's okay, status text, it returns headers, it's application JSON config, what we passed, and additional config information, and XML HTTP request object itself with all data, so you can use it directly without Axios wrappers. And we have data, we have name, height, we have all information we need from backend. So let's I will open it in second window, separate window. Okay, so in this case for Axios, we do not need to do additional layer for transforming data. You can get data directly from your response. So it was about data transformation. So how can we make post request? Another way how can we make request? It's a pass second parameter for fetch this object with some parameters. So let's do it. Let's create this object. So here we need to pass is method, and we can pass data, it's a body. So we could expect that we will pass name, date, we will pass body as a JSON, but not in this case. We need to stringify this data to a string, so we need call JSON. And transform the data to string. So after that, when we transform this data, we need to specify headers, because of fetch automatically will add special headers. In case we send a string, it will put special strings for header. It will be something like text, plain text. But as we send in JSON, we need to add headers. And so what we have in network, let's take a look. So network, it was post request to this API, and for file request, it responds status code, it's okay because of method post is not allowed for this endpoint, but anyway we could send this request to this backend. So it's a way how you can use post request with fetch. So how can we do it with Axios? To do it with Axios, we can do in the same way. We need the same. Let's copy it. So here we will use for Axios, let's remove it and just pass options. We need to specify URL. Method will be the same post, headers the same headers, and data, it's not a body, it's data, and we can pass data directly without any transformation. So let's remove this and get data in response. So let's take a look. Okay, we don't need this one. Yes, and we don't need this dot, just call Axios function. Here in header we see that request URL was people1, method post API people1, and we pass data name Maxim, preview response failed. This request was failed. Here we got error because we can't send response. We can't send request to this URL because of this endpoint doesn't expect post methods. But how can we handle it? Here let's catch. So Axios is the next case, it's error handling. So error. In our case, Axios handles errors as errors in catch section. So in case we will try to send, so we have this error in as a response. So let's take a look. Error post was failed. In network, yes, it's failed because of endpoint doesn't accept post request, so it was failed. But for fetch URL in error handling, we didn't get this error in catch, we got this error in data, so it was successfully resolved as with the error status. So what's the difference in this case? You will get your data always in then section because it will be resolved. Doesn't matter is it error or not, your request was successfully technically executed and you will get data even if this data is what you do not expect. And Axios, it will handle errors in a catch section. So even your request was technically executed successfully, it will catch the error in case there was some error like 404, 500, or even post doesn't accept it. So here let's try, we will put catch to check. So we have error. So in 30 seconds this request was failed, and we got error because it was technically fine request for existing URL, but it was thrown through the exception of timeout. But in case we will add some URLs that don't exist, and we will try to do a request. So let's try to format the data to text, and what we will get. Let's take a look. We see that we get data and this error. So request was unsuccessful with 404 request, but anyway we got data as a page, HTML page with 404 page, and we parsed it as a data in catch in the then section. So the next one was important. It's response timeout. So we saw that for pending request it took a lot of time, for example 30 seconds to do some request. Let's set some restrictions. For example, we want to stop requesting in 3 seconds. So with Axios we can use timeout property. So let's add it, and we'll pass a number of milliseconds. It's 3000. In 3 seconds it will be stopped. So let's try. And we see, what do we see, that in 3 seconds and a couple milliseconds, it doesn't matter, it was cancelled. Previously, all previous requests were executed, we waited 30 seconds, but this one, 3 seconds, and that's it. Request is cancelled. It's one great benefit of using Axios comparing with the fetch function. So let's try to do the same functionality for fetch. To do it, it will take much more time and effort. For implementation, we need a special built-in class. It's a abort controller. Okay, so what we need? Abort controller functionality from timeout. Let's add it. So we will create new controller from abort controller. We will pass options. It's a method post. It's a signal controller signal for handling body, first name, last name, and we will get this promise. We will fetch URL with these options, and then timeout ID we will use as a set timeout. We'll set number of milliseconds we are waiting. It's 4000 for seconds, and then we will call controller abort in case this request wasn't executed during this time. Do not need this anymore. And for fetch we will use in another wait. We need promise, and then we will get response. So let's take a look and catch, for example, for error. And what do we have? We have error. Let's take a look here. So for network we have this URL and it was failed. And in console, what do we see? We see that again we can't. Let's string, let's text. Let's leave it as a text. So this fetch method is not so clear and expected, but in Axios it works great. So the next one what I wanted to show you, it's interceptors. So HTTP interceptor, what does it mean? In case we want to execute some function inside the request, so we send request and we need to execute some function before this request or after when we get response. For example, we need to add some headers for authorization, or we need some additional data added to request, and we do not want to build this data all time during all requests. We can use the interceptor. So how can we implement interceptor for fetch function? To implement the interceptor for fetch function, we need to override our fetch function with the original fetch. It's a function will pass original fetch. It returns a function which accepts arguments, and then we will apply original fetch with these arguments, and then we can execute some functionality. In our case, we will console log some data. So let's try to do. So we see that request was sent, and let's take a look here. Let's edit our URL to do it correct one before. So we see that request was sent, and where is the data? So, and in 7 seconds we got data, and here we have data. This data what we expected. So we can add some middlewares. In our case, it's not middleware, it's interceptor. So how can we do the same for Axios? With Axios we have built-in implementation, so we can call Axios interceptors request, for example, put config, and here execute some functionality and then return config. So let's try to do it. Let's get, we do not need headers and data. Let's make call to these people and get response because timeout. So let's remove timeout. This request take a lot of time. Let's request was sent. In network we have this request. It's still pending, and after 11 seconds it was executed and we got our data. So data Luke Skywalker is what we expected, and we have this additional function execution request was sent. So in our case here we can add the interceptor for request and for response, and then just use our function as we expect usually. And the last one is simultaneous request. So let's imagine that we need to do requests for a couple endpoints in one time. For example, we need to get user 1 and user 2. So to do it using fetch, we can use promise all and execute this request in promise all. In pass array and fetch URL and fetch URL1. After that we will get then its promise resolver, we will get array, it's a function returns array, it's user 2. It's what we could expect in case we used data directly, but fetch returns response object. So to get this data, let's see what we will get. So here we see that we have two requests, it's for 1 and for people 2. They are both pending, it takes some time. So, and here we expect that promise fetch to get data from 2 endpoints. Then, as we know, fetch returns built-in response object. So we need to resolve this object and we execute it through the async await function. So we call this function async and we will get 2 response objects, and then we await for 2 response objects and get JSON data. It's u1 and user 2, and then we just console log this data. Okay, right now we have file 3, it's something with server. Right now it doesn't work, but in general it works fine. So let's do it the same with Axios. So for Axios we have with another implementation. It's built-in implementation, so we can use all pass array and Axios get URL and Axios URL1, and after that we will get data. So we need the same then, and Axios, here we can spread. It's a function of Axios and spread, and we will get user1 and user2. So we don't need to transform any data, we don't need to async await this data. Just spread, it's spread, and we will get data in two variables. So we have two requests, we are waiting, but I guess it will fail because of server doesn't work right now properly. But anyway, we see that two requests were sent. It's for people 2 and people 1. And this is a way how you can use the simultaneous request with Axios. So you can put any number of requests you want here. And it's the main difference between Axios and fetch method. You can compare them and choose what is better for you and for your specific project. So thank you for watching.